Welcome to Passive Wealth Principles Podcast. Today I have Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly, former Navy, I wouldn't say officer, just former Navy veteran. He was in the military for 15 years. Now he's part of active duty passive incomes. Talks about investing into his first fourplex, using his VA home loan to put no money down to buy 4 units. And then he discovered, I hate managing real estate, so I don't want to do that. And then how he got into a 62 unit deal and a 40 unit deal, how some of the people in the active duty passive income world, their first initial deal was 60 units. I know that's something that a lot of people aspire to do, is get into those big deals. And that is an opportunity to get educated. They have a lot of free content that they put out there. I'm excited for this episode to hear a little bit more of Tim's story, how he just is reframed his mindset and being insanely curious, and how that's led to certain levels of success. And I'm excited for this episode. And welcome again to one more episode with my friend, Tim Kelly. Tim, what's going on, brother? How are you doing? I'm excited for this episode because you're actually someone that is way further along down the road as far as in the podcast world. As a former veteran, whatever, in the military, I kind of had some affinities towards you, and you have the active duty passive income podcast that you've been putting out a ton of content where you're guiding people that are in the military to invest into passive income investments. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Dude, Jake, it's my pleasure, man. And I cannot take credit for the ADPI podcast. I'm not the host of it. It's part of our organization. It's part of what we do. We do send out a weekly podcast, but I have been on dozens and dozens, so it's not my first rodeo. But ADPI has just poured so much blood, sweat, and tears into that over the last 4 or 5 years, man. So we could dive into that, but let's get to the good stuff, dude.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to dive into that. So, and I've heard you. We've hung out a few times. You have some really interesting things about mindset, and specifically even some of the insights from someone that's in the military. So they're maybe not a high income earner, but they're getting a chance to invest into larger commercial deals, just changing their thought process. Most of the people that are listening to the passive wealth income aren't necessarily military, but they're maybe a high income earner. They're making money, they're doctor so-and-so. And I think that there's a lot of similarities, or at least parallel paths on, you can't get out of the military, but that doesn't mean your money can't go work for you on the side. So I'd love to hear a little bit more. First, I have your origin, your story. How did you discover that process in ADPI, and how did you get into this world, just to give people a foundational knowledge? And then what we can do is dive into some other things about that, your mindset, and then into how do you let passive income help you unlock a lifestyle by design?
Man, yeah, this is gonna be good. So I'll try to keep the bio brief. And my story, I was in the Navy for 15 and a half years. About around my 9-year mark, I was floating on a ship in the Persian Gulf on a long deployment, took a stack of books along with me just to, help time go by and all that stuff. They all were kind of related to just money and personal finance, building wealth. I always had an interest in that. And so, I just kept seeing a repeating pattern of real estate investing, and that's how you build wealth. So, that's when I think I got the real estate bug, and I got off that deployment. So all of 2015, I was just immersing myself in education, learning about all the different strategies, the different asset classes. And I just paid for education and paid for coaching, paid for mentorship to really help me go deep and figure out what I wanted to do. And I I kind of didn't really get any traction until I decided that which was going to be that asset class, which was going to be that strategy that I'm going to master, I get that level of mastery. So then people could take me seriously and I could start really sounding like the expert. And that was commercial and multifamily. Didn't really ever dabble in residential or wholesaling or single family or flipping. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense. I was looking to get as much and as scalable passive income as possible, as quick as possible. Maybe I wasn't patient. So commercial multifamily just sounded, good at that point. And so then once I made that decision, then I really went deep. I went horizontal, or I went super vertical down that one asset class strategy, just immerse myself in more. And I was networking with the intent of, I'm the multifamily commercial expert. I'm doing deals, and I started just letting everybody know what I was doing, what I was up to, what value I could add. And so, I got off that deployment, and then I was in Norfolk, Virginia Beach station there on the ships. And then I came here to Pensacola, Florida. I transferred here while I was still active duty. And 6 months after I got here, I closed on just a fourplex with the intent of house hacking, because needed to take advantage of that deal. I love multifamily, even if it's small multifamily, just as many doors as you can get under one roof. So I got that fourplex the month I got here, but then 6 months later, I closed on a 42 unit apartment complex, syndicated that with some friends. And then 6 months after that, got a mobile home community, both locally right after that, I ended up house hacking a triplex with my VA loan that I wrapped the cost of rehab into. A lot of people don't even know that you could do that. And so while I was sharing this same story on the Bigger Pockets podcast in 2018 as a guest, I was blessed enough to be asked to come on the show and speak about this. The then founders and the CEO and founder of Active Duty Passive Income heard me on that podcast. Of course, I just gave out my cell phone number, and they just immediately called me. And since then, I was just asked to be part of the team. I've been part of the Active Duty Passive Income team. We built this incredible community. Now I'm the VP of Education and a co-owner for the company. And just so much is happening inside that. Just on track to hit 100,000 members in our Facebook group this year. We got a best-selling book, huge, obviously a podcast. We've interviewed like Cardone and Kiyosaki and Jocko, all these awesome people. But we love interviewing our members who are still active duty, who are young, or who are veterans, who are going through our programs, crushing it, and creating that financial freedom and wealth. And the whole purpose of ADPI is to help past and present military members achieve financial freedom through owning real estate. And that's through owning more of America that they sort of protect and that they fight so hard for. Because we believe it should be the cornerstone of the portfolio if you're really trying to look for generational wealth. But then, I became a certified high performance coach. I was obsessed with personal development. And so I love the mindset thing. Mindset is absolutely everything. You could learn all there is to learn about investing in real estate. But if you don't have the right mindset, man, your self-talk is not going to be there, and your self-doubt will be increased, and your confidence won't be there, and your courage won't be there. And you won't have the right energy levels to do what you want to do. So man, that's a little bit about it. But how do you want to take this conversation, man?
There's so many awesome nuggets just in that first little snippet that I think we could go down like the rabbit hole in multiple different areas. Yeah. First, before we do that, what did you do in the Navy?
Yeah, the last job I had, I was a water survival instructor, and I was teaching the pilot students on engine systems and ethics and leadership. But I came here to be a water survival instructor because I was a rescue swimmer in the Navy. And so all pilots and air crewmen have to learn on basically how not to die if they get ejected from their aircraft. So I was a water survival instructor. Then I became a pilot instructor.
Have you seen the movie Top Gun yet?
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Haven't been to the movies in I don't even remember the last time. But my wife and I, a couple weeks back, we saw it. Absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it.
Same thing. It was my wife and I heard from so many buddies that they're like, dude, the new Top Gun movie is legit. And I was like, I don't know. I haven't been to the movies in 6 years. And so date night, I took my wife out. We went to it, and it was awesome. It was awesome. I was like, maybe I translate, and I think I'm a little bit older than you, but like the 13-year-old version of myself watching that when I was a kid, the original Top Gun, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Like that was part of what led me maybe into the military. Was I was just like, dude, that's badass. I want to fly jets. Like that's what I want to do. I want to fly jets. You can have a job like that. So again, the fact that 20 some odd years later, whatever it is, 25 years later, that there's a sequel released.
It's still Tom Cruise. That's hilarious.
It is. That's crazy. I think they replaced, a lot of people in there. But man, we back to the podcast. One of the things you talked about is like you just kind of skipped in and jumped into becoming an expert and niching down. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I hear this a lot. People call me up and say, like, hey, I want a good deal. And I was like, okay. Like, I was like, do you have any good deals? I was like, I don't know what a good deal is to you. What's a good deal to me could be a terrible deal actually for you. But, and so trying to define that. So talk me through like how you and explain to the audience, like what that process was for you of niching down and becoming an expert in one thing.
Yeah. I love that, man. So I'm glad we're opening this up because like when you get the real estate bug, not only are there dozens of podcasts, all these YouTube videos, bigger pockets, like all these education sources, and it's literally could be a black hole of information. So like, how do you approach it? How do you figure out where to focus? And so this is my recommendation based on the fact that I realized I was going horizontal across all the different asset classes and strategies to get like a good understanding. And then I started like trying to dabble in all of them, and it doesn't work. When you're first getting in or wherever you're at right now, like learn as much as you possibly can about single family, BRRRR strategy, single family wholesaling, flipping, and then maybe small multifamily, maybe commercial triple net type of stuff, maybe, just apartment complexes or mobile home, like learn a little bit about each one for the sole purpose of choosing one and saying no to everything else. Right? Say no to everything else. Just don't, especially when you're first getting started. If you're like, man, I really like these two, well, choose one and then say, as soon as I master it, as soon as I get systems in place, that's cool. Then I'll shift over if it's still a thing. But there's a lot of factors that are playing into role right now with inflation and with, this recession that has been happening since 2017. People are saying, oh, recession's coming. Well, I still know people who are sitting on the sidelines since 2017 waiting for a recession to happen, right? But anyway, like what asset classes and strategies have endured, right? And so at that time, it made sense. Like I got into commercial multifamily. I tried to get as many doors as under one roof as possible to mitigate what's happening right now, right? To hedge against what's happening right now. And when you have one door and if you have one vacancy, guess what? You don't have any income. When you have 100 doors and maybe like COVID or the pandemic, kicked out 60% of your or 40% of your tenants, you're still left with 60% revenue that you're still paying the bills. You're still, probably able to maybe withhold it, investor distributions, but they understand, right? Most likely. But that didn't even happen to us. We actually very much thrived. All the assets that I have, we thrived through the pandemic because we're in great markets. The managers enforce the rules. Like, look, and I think we got lucky because we're not in any states that are significantly and strongly tenant friendly instead of landlord friendly. I think that's a huge thing. Like generally dealing with certain states that are landlord and tenant friendly during the pandemic. Because you go to California, man, like they don't care about landlords. They're gonna like say, hey, if you're a tenant, you get free rent for the next 3 years or whatever it was. So like, I wouldn't want to be in those states. So I think learning a little bit about every single asset class and, getting to know people who are experts in every single asset class, asking some questions and learning for the sole purpose of picking one, focusing wholeheartedly on it, saying no to everything else, then having the faith to say, I am an investor in this asset class with this strategy and shouting it from the mountaintop, letting everybody know who you are. And you have to educate yourself to have that much confidence sometimes in order to have those conversations. I don't know if that helps or if that answers the question, but I think that's kind of from what I learned, man.
I think that's great advice. I mean, just, niching down on one thing. I mean, there's an ocean of information out there. And if you're trying to take it all in at once, it'll be overwhelming and you'll need a rescue swimmer to come guide you into the right place. So Thank you for guiding us and rescuing us into one niched down market. Why did you land on commercial real estate and multifamily. What was it about, and then I'm assuming that you did and took your own advice and looked at a lot of different assets and maybe you touched on it. Was it just you're impatient, or what is it that led you to commercial real estate and multifamily?
It just didn't make sense. Like I was like, man, I could do the single family home. I could invest a little bit of money, then use the burst strategy and refinance out and roll it into the next one, then do it over and over and over. It's just, I was full-time active duty. I knew that by that fourplex, I actually self-managed that very first fourplex. I self-managed it. I got it fully occupied. And I did that management for two reasons: for either to start my own management company or to pass it off to the best manager. And then I had experience to be able to have intelligent conversations with property managers. So at that point, I was like, cool, never going to manage again. Way too much work, and I'm glad I did that. And that was a 4-unit property. God forbid if it was a single family unit, like it would have been the same amount of work with a lot less revenue. Now I'm still actually holding that fourplex, which is great cash flow, and I don't really do much with it. I think I might be selling it. But it just didn't make sense to me to do deal after deal after deal. And then they were like, the thing was like, oh, you can get $200 a door and $200 a door. And it just seemed like it would take a long time. And I think because I'm impatient, I'm like, there's got to be other ways. Like I can go bigger. And then I just had the open mind to say, what about these large deals? Like who invests in these? So I just had that curiosity. I think that is a huge thing that people don't talk about, is the most successful people are like the most curious people around. They ask them, they're like, they always stay, like kids are the most curious. They're like sponges. They soak everything up. Never lose your curiosity. So just stay curious. And I think I had that curiosity, and I just started reading books and listening to podcasts specific to commercial and multifamily. And then I had enough like momentum, like this seems to make a whole lot of sense. I can get 100 doors. And, I won't say they're recession proof or recession resistant. If anything, they have thrived through the pandemic, like in the right markets with the right management, with the right financing. Both mobile home communities and apartment communities literally have thrived through the pandemic. And that's like what it really interested me very, like, probably more than anything else. Not only the fact that I could be an owner in like a 5, 10, $20 million property and only do a percentage of the work, because it takes partnerships. And I think being in the military, you can test it. That like we are programmed to do so many good things in real estate and in business: our grit, our resilience, our hard work, our leadership, our humility, all these things. But like we learn how to do everything in teams. Like we learn how to rely on our brothers and sisters with our lives. So like we naturally are trained to work in and lead teams. And it just made more sense. Like I would rather work with a couple awesome other dudes and just go take down large deals than try to do everything on my own with a single family deal, because you don't have as much income and revenue to pay the full-time property manager, a full-time handyman, unless you're at scale, unless you have a lot of doors. Right. So yeah, that's a little bit more about it.
That's great advice. And I think obviously coming from someone that played sports teams and then being part of the military, and I understood that same process. It was like, when you join, you go into boot camp, or I don't know what they call it in the Navy, but for at least in the Army, it was basic training, a boot camp, and you're down there and it's like they're smoking your ass. Like they're breaking you down as an individual to then build you up in a collective team, because when they say, hey, go charge that hill, you're not like, well, I don't know if that's really good for me. Yeah. You'd be like, I'll pass. You'd be like, but sometimes, as a cog in the machine of the military, you're going to need to go effectively to accomplish the mission. So there's great insights in that as far as working as a team. You don't have to collectively know everything. And so, you said you did your first deal, you self-managed, and you said, this sucks. I don't want to do that. So like, what does your team look like now today? And then maybe a little bit further down the path that you've discovered of, your own skill sets, and then things that you want to do or don't do. And then what makes up that kind of good team for you today?
Oh man, so good. So there was a lot of lessons with that. And, I realized that a lot of people think like they need to find a team and go all in with that same team and then start building out systems and processes and all that. And that is that's a great way to do it. If you could find those partners that where you're on the same page, you're ethically and morally aligned, you want the same long-term goals, that's amazing. Like, that's not the only way. And for people who, like myself, I was part of multiple teams. I'm still part of multiple teams. I just created another team to take down mobile home park deals, and we just had our conversation today about how to create those systems and processes, and how we could, do things at scale. So until you go through a deal, you won't really know what you're going to be the best at. But here's the thing: you could absolutely learn enough about the different roles and responsibilities, and then based on your own, what you know about yourself, you can say, am I more of a numbers guy? Like, am I analytical? Should I do the underwriting? Should I be more of the financial analyst? Or am I mostly going to be the one to connect with brokers, maybe find the deals? Or do I have access to capital? Or do I think raising capital is more for me? Or do I want to be an asset manager? Do I have program management or people leadership skills? Like, maybe I want to be an asset manager. So while you're learning in that journey, when you hone it down and you say no to everything else, you learn the process a lot more. And the more you learn, you're going to know the roles and responsibilities, and you're going to ask yourself, well, which one am I going to do? Which one am I going to go all in on? Now, you know the whole A to Z process. How am I going to fit into that? And then slowly improve your self-awareness. Like, we had this multifamily academy where every single person goes through multiple personality assessments and behavioral assessments, because they learn something about themselves every time they do it. And if you take it 6 months later, you'll probably have different results. And it's crazy. We've seen that. And so, like, if you know enough about yourself, you could maybe decide, maybe you just need to practice and sit back and learn more about yourself, more about your strengths and weaknesses based on what you already know. Let's say, based on what you were in the military, or based on what you were doing for your job, or what your strengths are, how you're designed, what you're programmed, how do you fit into that deal? And then as soon as that's gotta be something that you put into some kind of elevator pitch when you're sharing it with partners, when you're sharing it with people who you want to hang out with. Be very specific. This is the type of deal I'm looking at. This is what I can bring to the table. This is the value that I could add. And these are my goals. Like, have that lined up and be able to articulate that Barney style. So even like your 5-year-old nephew could understand what you're talking about, to where it's like, this is what I do. This is how I add value. And this is what I'm looking for. And the more people you get to know while you're networking, all you really care about is them and their, what I call their Ford. Care about them, be genuinely interested in their family, their occupation, their recreation, and their dreams. You're going to find out a lot about them. And then you're going to tailor your conversation to what you just found out. If they're looking for an underwriter, if they're looking for the capital raiser, now you know what they're looking for. If that's something you could do, hey, look, I can capital raise. That's what I do. That's what I specialize in. So improve your self-awareness. Education is key to learn what all this whole process is. Improve your self-awareness to determine how you fit into it, and then go share that with everybody with absolute clarity. And then before you know it, man, you're going to find exactly what you're looking for to fill the rest of the gaps. Whatever if you don't want to be an asset manager, you're not the analytical guy. It's okay. It's cool. That's the beauty of having a team. You just find the people that fill those gaps.
Yeah, I think the focus, the different roles, what it takes to be, obviously in the sponsor GP seat, raising the money, doing the ops, doing the sales or the marketing, bringing in the capital. And then I think there's actually another component to that is, you're syndicating out these deals. They're passive investors in some of those deals that I think, there's typically a lot more of those people into one of these bigger commercial deals that, and it was actually a conversation we're having and talking, I don't know if you know part of it, Pat Hyben was talking about how he's an LP investor, a limited partner into like some of these shopping centers. And this guy had tens of, or 20s of mini shopping centers, millions of square feet. And Pat was sitting down and said, hey, wow, got to be great. Look at all the money you're making and, doing and having all these shopping centers and stuff. And the guy was like, yeah, but I'm the one that has a hard time sleeping at night because there's always problems. There's something that somebody's going to call me up in the morning. They're going to be like, hey, the bank's you want this, their property's got a sprinkler, issue, something caught on fire, the tenants are not paying their rent. So when you're the sponsor, there's a lot of roles and things that you're doing where that GP was like, Pat, isn't it great that you just send me money and you don't have to do anything? And Pat was like, yeah, actually, that was why I don't do that, because I don't like working. I don't want more work. I want less work. So maybe also talk about that from the role of being kind of a passive investor as like an LP, because I think you've, experienced both sides of that. What is your experience as being kind of like the LP side or the limited partner, and some of maybe like people in the military that are active duty, they don't have the time. How is that in structured for them as an investor?
Yeah. So good, man. So like I've seen it both ways where people want to be like, hey, I have 25K, 50K, whatever. I want to be an LP first. Like the goal is to be a GP, but I want to be an LP first to like go through the process and see what it's like being on the receiving end and being the capital investor. And then I could kind of start learning a little bit more. And then like they think it's like the next level to be a GP, when in my mind, like almost, and for a lot of people, it's like the other way around. Like the goal is to be a limited partner, because all you're doing, you're in that I quadrant of the cash flow quadrant. You are doing nothing, but you have the capital. You understand how to analyze, underwrite, conduct due diligence on the investors or on the GP team, on the deal, on the numbers yourself, and you're just parking capital. You're sitting back. You're doing nothing. You have no voting rights in most cases, but you're sitting there collecting mailbox money, and you own most of the deal. You own far more of the deal than the GP. Like the LPs always own more than the GP. So I've seen it both ways. And so, but for me, like that's why I'm at the point now where I try not to do, unless we're doing like, 20 million plus dollar deals where it's just makes sense to bring in multiple investors. But now there's InvestNext and different portals that make it a lot more streamlined for investor relations and things like that. Syndication Pro is great too. But like we like doing JV deals where it's just 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 guys who don't have to raise and don't have to serve investors, where it's everybody does everything. They bring in all the capital. They have all the resources. They split all the work. They're all the owners 100%. That's the cool thing about being a JV. But syndications, like the GPs do all the work and get, maybe 20, 30, maybe 40% of the ownership, depending on the split, and the LPs get more of it. So personally, I'm doing less and less as a GP in syndications, especially if I have like asset manager and investor relations, all that. And I'm shifting more to the JV and then being an LP, because LP, you have the capital, you understand how to analyze, you place your capital with the right operator, and you sit back and you literally do not. That's the epitome of passive investing. It doesn't really get much more passive than that.
Well, I think that's also, it goes back to your mindset, kind of thought process is, I think there's like a do-it-yourself, mentality, and that's maybe the residential. You start in, you buy the one, and you got to fix it up and do it yourself. And then there's kind of the project manager, like you're going to manage and be the GP. And then it's like, oh, you kind of elevate higher and higher up, and it's like, actually, I don't want to do more work. And because we all have a limitation on the amount of time that we have in existence. We have the same 24 hours that everybody else does. The only way in which you can really go to the next level is leveraging other people's work and leveraging their, thing. Because if I invest into a team of 10 people, they have way more time collectively of 10 people than I do from myself. And so if everything relies on me, it's probably going to suck. And I was like, and I can see that myself in so many situations in my business and others where I was like, I'm probably the worst person to do anything in the company. Because I suck at most things.
Yeah, so many good points. And I did want to go back. I know you said, well, what about like military people and their passive? This is one opportunity to plug what something really, really cool ADPI is doing is we created ADPI Capital. And like this fund, it's a Reg A plus fund for our massive community where military members, past or present, or whoever could invest in more real estate in America for as little as $500. And that capital, so it's just the equity fund one that we have is a $10 million fund, and then we're going to move to a 50 and then probably 75. That fund is actually raising capital so it could be invested in the other military members in our community, in the top members who we call heroes. The ADPI heroes are the top members. They've been our students. They've done a bunch of deals. Now they're coaching other people, and we're funding their deals and our top students' deals who bring them to us. We vet them. Me and Adam Labar, the other GoBro, he's like the director of ops and chief underwriter for ADPI Capital. And between him and I and other people on our team, we decide whether these deals meet the criteria. So like these members of the community are investing in the deals of other members in the community, and it's all big military community. So it's a Reg A plus fund, is allowing that lower barrier of entry as little as $500. You could be a passive investor in these types of deals, receive cash flow, quarterly distributions, receive your K-1 and your tax benefits. So that was a huge problem, and that's what we put in place to solve it. And we're just super excited about it. We got a huge conference coming up in October. We're probably going to be fully funded by that point, but then we'll probably move on to the next fund, and we're bringing people together to share. Like, look, there are ways that while you're serving, you could still passively invest and own more of America if you're deployed and stuff. You don't have to be present. You don't have to only invest in, where you're living and stuff like that. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
That's awesome. Actually, I'd love to take a moment right now to dive into a little bit more of ADPI and like, what does that world look like? We glossed over as far as the fact that there's 100,000 people. You do some of these education, you have this Reg A plus fund, some of those other things, but like unlock for me what you guys have built and what are all the offerings that you have in that kind of community.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for asking, man. So it literally started with a small Facebook group, a military real estate investing academy, just online course hosted on Kajabi, and a podcast and the podcast. That was back in late 2017, early 2018 when it was when it was first launched. And I joined mid 2018, and I was the fifth person brought on. Adam Labar was also the fourth person brought on. Education, like the whole purpose of this is just being the premier real estate investing platform to help educate other past and present military members on how to create generational wealth and passive income through real estate. And that's through owning more of America. Like I said, more of the land that they swore to protect and fight so hard for. And so from that little Facebook group, the podcast, and that course for single family investing and VA loan education, and maybe a little bit of turnkey investing, just for residential side. Now, education is our core. So now we have a full blown, very robust military real estate investing academy and mastermind for single family and residential. We have a very robust military, commercial, and multifamily academy and mastermind, where now we have a boot camp style 8-week cohort class that they go through the whole academy within 8 weeks, weekly accountability calls that go through a workbook. We talk about high performance and mindset. It's just been amazing. People transform more than I thought they ever would within that 8 weeks. And then, we have this Facebook group. We're on track to hit 100,000 members, in our group. And we have we're constantly listening to our members. And we know that there's lenders out there who claim to be VA loan experts, and they're simply not. They're simply selling products. That's all they're doing. They're not experts. They're just selling products. So we have ADPI lending. We have our own mortgage brokerage where we have military real estate investors who are loan officers and experts in the industry who coach you and help you and figure out not just to go pay too much for a retail home, but for investing purposes to make smart long-term choices. We have loan officers that help educate you and serve you, and we have less fees and better customer service because a lot less people have to get paid compared to like Veterans United, USAA, Navy Fed. And then we also have ADPI insurance for whole life insurance policies using the infinite banking concept, the high cash value, dividend paying whole life insurance policies. I absolutely love the strategy. There's so many people who don't quite understand it. There's so much misguided information out there, from people like Dave Ramsey, and term is better and whole life is crap. And it's there. We can go down a massive rabbit hole right now. I'd love to hear your stance too, Jake, on whole life and all that. But we have ADPI Insurance for those who understand cash flow banking. And we also have our own brokerage where we have a whole slew of agents across the US who we have vetted, who are military, who understand investing, and who are able to help all of our members in our community serve them. And so it's just like an all-in-one thing, and we're helping each other out, but it's mainly education. And then we provide all those financial services and support. And then of course, now we have this fund to just lower the barrier of entry for people to passively invest. And now we have our conference in October in New Orleans. We're just so excited about that, bringing everybody together, have some amazing keynote speakers ready to go. And it's just, we need community. It's all about community, people sharing their challenges, being vulnerable, helping each other out. And we have accountability groups inside the masterminds now, because accountability is what the most successful people understand they need more of. Even this, man, the most successful people we know, it's not easy for them to hold themselves accountable, right? They need other people. They need a coach or an accountability group or some kind of system, in place for accountability purposes, because they want to achieve their goals, and we all get in our own heads, regardless of how successful you are. But ADPI is a community that we're super proud of, and we haven't even gotten started, man. We're just we're on this path, and we're looking to impact so many more military members.
What an awesome thing that you guys are putting together there. And I mean, it seems like every time I connect up with you, it's grown. You've added, so many more things to it. And it's like, wow, it's even better. We
hired 4 people.
Yeah. So how many people are you guys employing now?
It's like 22 or 23. And it's crazy. Like it takes a whole team to moderate a Facebook group of that size. And it's mainly because we protect it from solicitors, from agents and lenders going in there trying to poach leads. And we don't allow soliciting at all. Like, it's just value and community and helping each other and that. And like, we don't allow posts to go through that are like, hey, this is what I can offer. DM me. Or agents or lenders go in there all the time. They try to do it, but it's like a full-time team that is moderating just the Facebook group alone, let alone the sales processes and all the other tech and the background and the marketing and everything like that, dude. It's definitely, I was just explaining this to one of the ADPI heroes. It's, something so big, like things move in such a slow rate. It's like a huge cargo ship if we're trying to make a pivot, versus if you're like a one-man show or you only have a couple people, it's like you could easily turn on a dime and pivot and make different changes in your business and your trajectories. But like for us, things are moving so slow because it's such a massive thing. And like, we're in so many different vertical markets, and it's like, there's a lot to consider. But yeah, I mean, that's all that, is what's kind of coming up for me. But anyway, yeah. What else you got, man? What else you want to dive into?
I'd like to dive in a little bit more of kind of that education. I mean, that's such a critical part of ADPI. It's been a part of your own journey as far as that, curiosity, I like that quote that you put there. The most curious people are often the ones that are most successful. And it's even, maybe, permeated your life and what has led to some of your successes. So, and you can take that in a couple different ways, is like, what is that like education process in ADPI? Or if there's somebody looking to get educated and take some action, tactics and steps into their, how do you guide someone? What's that advice that you give to them? Or maybe it's just, what do you have available, and let people kind of self-select what their own path is?
Absolutely. I love it. And this is one of the reasons why we wrote this book, Military House Hacking. It's, it's a best-selling book, and right now it's free on our website. You could download it for free right now. It's a best-selling book. So just that awareness and reading, you have to have the curiosity to say, hey, maybe I can use this VA loan that people keep talking about, with maybe get into a fourplex for 0% down. A lot of people might not realize that's a special thing, right? A lot of people might not realize the power of just the VA loan in and of itself. But we have the Military House Hacking is a book that's free. It's really something that just helps people understand how they can leverage their VA loan, how they can change their mindset and create passive income and generational wealth while they're serving, after they've served, just using their benefits. And then we have, I wrote another book on the website. It's a free book. It's the Blueprint to Financial Success. It's just the stuff we should all have learned in school about personal finance and money. The absolute basics about the difference between good debt and bad debt. The assets and liabilities is how you get net worth. I mean, like if you ask the average person, be like, hey, what is your net worth? They'll be like, what the heck is that? Like, how do you figure that out? Like, we should all know coming out of high school what net worth is, and that it's assets minus liabilities, and what is an asset, what is a liability, what is good debt, what is bad debt, the basics of credit. So we have all these free resources. We have that book with a workbook that really walks them through how to fill everything out, how to determine their income and expenses, how to net worth, and what, like, all the steps that they need, because a lot of it is a mindset shift, as you know. And there's an all-in-one credit guide. Like, we don't get taught anything about credit. Like, what should we know about credit cards and different types of lines of credit and the 3 different bureaus, and how should we monitor our credit, all these things. So we have these free resources. We have free master classes, a master class on single family and residential investing, a free master class on commercial and multifamily investing. We have a free masterclass on this whole infinite banking concept. And for stuff, if it resonates with people, that's when they could go sign up and get more information and how to join our multifamily academy, our single family residential academy. And that's where we filtering out the people who continue to go through that, okay, this makes sense, I'm ready to commit. Then they can pay and invest in themselves and invest in their future and go through this high quality education and put themselves intentionally in a room with other military investors who are also taking action. And if this, because you're in GoBennett and I know who you are, that you have to be very intentional on the rooms that you put yourself in, and very intentional about who you hang out with, because the people that are going to help you grow are not just going to randomly show up in your life. You have to be very intentional about the rooms you put yourself in and the circles you run in, because your network equals your net worth, if that's something that interests you, right? So yeah, I mean, we have the free resource. The podcast is free. Our YouTube channel is free. We have all these free resources. And for the stuff, if it resonates with people, they could watch the master classes that are free. We do free freedom calls, free coaching calls in our community for people who want those and learn more about how, the steps that they need. And then we have these academies and masterminds. And then it kind of just goes from there, because once you're in the mastermind, it's every single week. There's coaching, there's accountability. You get all kinds of awesome stuff included with that.
Man, this is so comprehensive. So tell me about that. Masterclass, free masterclass. Is that a few hour program? What is that?
It's an hour long. Okay, look, this is what it is. And this is also, just to be transparent, I'm not, this is a part of the funnel. When people are okay, I want to learn more information, I think this is for me, it's part of the sales funnel. It's a 1 hour long webinar that is a live webinar that people, they register for free. They show up, they really learn, okay, the speaker, who is this person? What's their backstory? How are they qualified to do it? What are all the steps? How does this happen? How could I start creating passive income in real estate while I'm serving or while I'm not? Really, it's an hour long deep dive, and it's hey, if this stuff resonates with you, that means you need to highly consider joining our academy and joining our mastermind, because you need to put yourself in the right room, right? And then they'll have a chance to join at the end of that. So yeah, it's they go through the free master class, and at the end, for at least for the commercial multifamily academy, it's a larger ticket price tag. So then they go on a phone call, they apply, and then they go on a phone call to make sure that it's the right fit. The person on our team will talk to them. The person will go through the masterclass. They'll click to apply to join, because we want only the best people in our masterminds. So they could apply. They get on a call with our team, and then they're in if they kind of meet all the requirements, and they demonstrate that they're committed and they're ready to rock and roll. Does that answer the question? The masterclass is a free,
So and you mentioned you had a boot camp, and then also kind of your academy. So what? I mean, I'm sure people can log into your website and find out some of those things. These are some of the steps. I mean, that's great. And it sounded like you had multiple master classes, multiple 1 hour kind of things. Is to your advice that you were giving earlier. take a look. Is that interesting to you? Is commercial interesting to you? Is residential? And I don't know if you have short-term rentals or have whatever, but I mean, there's just a whole lot of different ways in which you can approach investing into real estate. I was talking to somebody a while ago, is they did some like Airbnb. They are like a host on it, kind of like your similar experience. So they're like, I hated it. I hated everything about it. I hated the fact that people were always in and out there. They were complaining. They're like, dude, the soap smells weird. Why didn't you use the nicer, toilet paper or something like that? And so to him, doing that experience highlighted that he wanted to do like industrial buildings where he's like, I never want to talk to the tenant. They're on a 10-year lease or 20-year lease and they take care of everything. And I never talk to them. Like, That's what I want. That is woo.
Dude, and
zen.
sometimes you have to go take action and do it to make those realizations happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we do have a military short-term rental academy that is in work. It's not available right now because it's very robust, and we're having people from the community help us that are very familiar with it. But yeah, sometimes you just don't know until you do it. Like, you could have ask five different people who seemingly are experts and they'll tell you 5 different things, and you can make your own assumption, but until you go in there, take action, do it for yourself, make your own judgments, then repivot based on that. Does this still make sense? But dude, it's a hospitality business. It's not, you can't even call it real estate investing. It's like you own a mini hotel. Like, you're in hospitality,
Well, yeah, that's we can get in and digress into other things of why.
Yeah.
I actually think there's a lot of risk to the Airbnb short-term rental. We have a affordable housing issue in this country, and it is much more politically acceptable to go after the rich investors that are taking housing away from people and affordable housing. And that's their second home, their third home, their 20th home. You rich, people, how dare you? But it's very acceptable to own apartments or mobile homes or those other things because you're providing that affordable housing. And if you're looking for some risk adjusted to political environment. So again, that's something we could definitely digress on. I want to get back to, your own kind of journey and mindset and how that's changed. At least for me, like, I didn't know what I was getting into when I got into the military. I didn't know what I was getting into when I got into investing. I didn't know a lot of these things. And part of it was just that discovery process. So walk me through kind of your own mindset journey. And then obviously now to how you're coaching people in mindsets and how that's evolved for you, and some advice, because I think that is such a critical thing that you mentioned. Because it doesn't matter how much education. You can read about push-ups all you want. You can read and go through the masterminds and the academies, but until you actually start doing them, and then how at least that guiding path, and I cue that up for, tell me about your own mindset and then where you see that the opportunity for people to help evolve their own.
Man, I think again, I think it really all stems from that curiosity. Like, I don't know if I'm just a kid on the inside, because kids are way more curious than adults usually, but I always try to remain as curious as possible. And so I just was always in the military. Not only was I just interested in learning more about money and personal finance and how do rich people get rich and how do you build generational wealth and all that. So I just kept reading and kept mind feeding on that. But I also just became obsessed with personal and professional development. And I think I got really lucky because a lot of people want to learn the how-tos, and they want to get ready to take down a 100-unit deal or go be a general partner in a large syndication or something like that. But a lot of them are held back because they have to grow into that person that is able to achieve those goals. And so I think because I've always had that curiosity of like, how could I just have more energy? How could I be more courageous? How could I have more confidence? How could I learn to speak better, communicate better? How could I master my mindset, my psychology, my physiology, and how I feel, and my vibrancy? Like, all these things, I was always trying to just improve these different things. And I realized as I was doing that, I was also learning more and more about real estate. So I think that just significantly expedites your journey to success. If you are growing tangentially as a person, as a human, as a giver, as a philanthropist, as a Christian, as a husband, a wife, like all those other holistic views that we love talking about in GoBundance, all the other pillars other than investing, like grow all those things as you're becoming a better investor. And like in the long term, it's just gonna pay so much more dividends. And so I always was learning about that stuff. I was even considering becoming a professional development instructor. And while I was still in the military, that didn't work out, but I was always learning to do that. And that's why I love, like, one book could absolutely change your life. And so, as I started investing, I learned, like, when I was reading and listening to the most successful people, they were talking about mindset, and I was learning how do successful people think? How do the most successful people take action? How do they spend their time? How do they hack their productivity? Where do they go? Where are they investing? Like, how do they think? Right. And so I'm learning, like, oh man, this is very much resonating with me. It just, it's a growth process. It's not like, oh, I learned something and now I know what I need to know. And then no, it's ever changing, evolving, because the minute you stop growing, you start dying. It's not like you grow and then you're there. Success is a journey, and it's just like a growth is a journey. Be a student of life forever. The people who are the most successful people are very curious, and they're students. They're always learning. They're forever students. So it's just like an ever changing. And there's so many books that I want to read. So many are on my Audible to-do list. I got stacks of books right here, like sitting on my desk, ready to read. Like this one, I cannot wait to dive into. I'm sure. Did you get the one by Jason Dries, Do the Impossible? Yeah, dude. And the funny thing is, like, with one of the first couple pages, he's like, this is the entire book in one page. And like, so it's just, I can't read that one, but I don't know if that answers your question, but, it's really, really important to continue your personal growth journey. And that's why I think it impacts your ability to succeed more than learning the mechanics of investing and the markets and the economy and all that stuff. Because anybody can learn that stuff and pay attention to it. But that's why I became a certified high performance coach, man, because so many people they hold themselves back because of their negative self-talk. But where does that come from? It's their belief will turn into their self-talk. That self-talk will turn into their attitude and how they act, how their demeanor, and that will dictate the results in life. So how do you control, really, all the way back to that belief and that faith in yourself that could turn into that positive self-talk, so that positive self-talk turns into that attitude, that vibrancy, that energy that people resonate with and that you can influence others with. And then that will dictate your level of success, man. It's just it's a journey. It's never ending. And I love, there's so much to learn out there. You can never learn everything. Just be humble, be a forever student, and be curious all the time. That's probably the things I could share the most about that.
Well, I think that's very insightful, and I think and I heard this recently, and I'm stealing it from somebody, but it was like, when can you work out enough to where you never have to work out again? And they're like, that's not the thing. So it's like the same thing with like learning. You're like, there's never a level where you can learn enough to where you don't have to learn anymore. So it's like, you go to the gym, you do like, all right, I'm fit today, but what about in 6 months or a year or whatever? And then you're 50 pounds overweight, Yeah. And so it's a collectively, and at least that made sense to me when I heard it, was like, there is no place where you can work out enough that you never have to work out again in your life.
Yeah.
You mentioned that books, you have stacks of books. You're like me. I have stacks of books everywhere. My wife is mildly annoyed with the fact that I have stacks of books on my nightstand in the kitchen. My bookshelf's overflowing here. And she's like, she's like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, well, there's a lot of things wrong with me. But I'd like to get your insight on some action items as we're kind of wrapping up the show. Like, what are some books for you that have been monumental? And it could be that you've gifted it to the most people. It could be the book that, made the biggest impact on your life that you think other people should read, something like that. So your pick. Action items people should take, books, because I know you're such a big reader. I think that for me, same thing, is a good tactic for people to use to level up their thinking.
Yeah. Happy to kind of just split it here. Like, the books for mindset, right? For growth, for success, for the most transformational books for me. I'll list off, like, you absolutely, if you haven't read How to Win Friends and Influence People, it's a playbook. I mean, should be required reading for everybody that wants to be anything in this life, right? How to Win Friends and Influence People. I got to plug Wealth Can't Wait by our guys. Wealth Can't Wait is incredible. And then Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, right? The Navy SEAL, amazing story. Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, just, that could apply in so many areas of life. The Compound Effect is probably one of my favorite personal growth and development books. And the last one, which is probably one of the most powerful and the shortest, is The Go Giver. Love all those, but there's so many other mindset books that I can go through. But if you're looking for more like investing and real estate type stuff, definitely Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's just, if you haven't read that, please do. I imagine most of you have. Cash Flow Quadrant is that sequel. And what really got me interested in commercial multifamily, I remember the ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy. And he wrote then The Advanced Guide to Real Estate Investing. And then he wrote the Property Management. He's just an amazing educator. And so those, I'll probably start with those, and then like Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad's, tax advisor. And then Loopholes of Real Estate by Garrett Sutton, which is the legal advisor by like, I learned so much from that. Those are books that are in layman's terms, Barney style, and that's what I like. The list goes on. There's so many different ones. I'm just looking at all these amazing books that have been impactful, and way too many that I haven't even read yet. So that's probably where I'll end it for now for those books.
I feel like I've actually read all of those that you mentioned on there, because they're so foundational to who I am as well. And so I can almost reiterate exactly what you said. They're so, critical. The Extreme Ownership by Jocko. And, we just did some of the Echelon Front training program that I did down in Arizona with his group. And it was unbelievable. And it was actually, what happens is you get out of your own way of thinking it's about the tactics, it's about the mindset, and then how you're actually approaching so many things. So huge benefit to that Extreme Ownership. Man, I feel like we could talk for hours, and we do. Sometimes we get a chance to sit down and we have lunch, or we're hanging out at some event, and it's like we can just talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
I don't want to be Joe Rogan and have a 42-hour long podcast. So I'd like to, kind of close out here is, where can people find you? I think we probably hit on a lot, but give the actual things. Where can they follow you personally? Where can they find ADPI if they happen to be active duty passive income or interested? And then the final thing is, how can people help you, or what can they bring to you?
For ADPI, active duty passive income, Facebook group, you got to answer some questions, make sure you're military affiliated, make sure you won't solicit or anything like that. The Facebook group, it's very engaging, and or just activedutypassiveincome.com. So much. It's a really, really great, well-designed website with very user-friendly, all that stuff that we talk about, all the free resources, and we can connect you with lenders and with our agents, and with, insurance agents if you're interested in infinite banking, all that stuff. So at active duty passive income for Instagram and stuff like that. But for me personally, at the Timothy Kelly is, my Instagram and my LinkedIn, and then thetimothykelly.com is just my website. And if this stuff resonated with you, just shoot me a text and we'll hop on a call. And the best way to reach me is area code 847-910-9161. Just shoot me a text. Let me know you heard me on Jake's show, and we'll just get on a call. My ask is that if you're past or present military, and you've thought about investing, tap into our free resources. Like, get involved, be part of the conversation. Don't be afraid to be the dumb person in the room. That means you're in the right room. That means you're only growing, right? And go through all the free masterclasses, read our free books. Like, if that stuff resonates with you, it could be life changing. It could be absolutely pivotal. You're going to be the only one that holds yourself back. Don't think you can't invest in commercial multifamily real estate while you're active duty. Adam Labar, the other GoBro, his first deal was a 62 unit apartment complex while he was stationed in Japan that he bought in Knoxville. And he's the other head coach. Like, it's possible. Don't hold yourself back. And if you're looking to level up, if you consider it, I'm also looking to help a few more people to further throughout the rest of the year for high performance coaching one-on-one. And this is something that applies to anybody in any facet of life. Regardless of your income, regardless of what industry you're in, high performance coaching could absolutely be transformational for you. So yeah, those, and if, again, you want to have a conversation, just shoot me a text and we'll hop on a call.
Amazing. Tim, I really appreciate you. Guys, I do not say this lightly that he is a wealth of knowledge. He's been in, not the literal trenches. He was on a boat floating around the world, but he has been in the proverbial trenches of life and bootstrapping himself up to success in becoming a passive investor, has a lot of experience in discovering those things. So this is huge, valuable insights, especially for those of you that are listening to this from the passive wealth principles. Again, go check out Tim and all of his platforms. If you're looking for a coach, reach out to him. I know there's very limited seats available to that. Just get around him. His energy is infectious. He gets and he hypes you up. I'm hyped up every time I'm around him. Go check it out. And thanks to you again for another episode of Passive Wealth Principles.